So so it's kind of the opposite of ekphrastic poetry, where the coming out of the forms.
Right, so they're actually ekphrastic.
Yeah.
She's not.
They're responding to one artwork in
Which is
another
what
medium.
these words, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this thing just took on a life of its own. We ended up doing video form based on it. It was translated into Spanish by somebody Diana knows.
That's awesome.
In Spain. So it just kept on trucking.
I love that kind of stuff. This is yeah, no, that's a collaboration with a photographer that I've been working with.
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah. This is really nicely designed.
We worked with the designer on this, Little Press.
Text me. On Snapchat or message?
This is the first in a series of collaborations that they're doing.
Beautifully designed.
And the point
You're not one of the people I usually
that we had when we wanted to put it together, the press was like all about, was we wanted to do it so that we could afford, because there's a kind of an ethnographic component here. And I'll talk about the project, but we wanted to be able to afford to go back to the place that we're documenting and just put 100 of them in the library, or put some in the senior center and put them around town for people to just look up. And then we could sell them for $5. It's kind of, it's almost like a four-color fancy. It's like a poetry doesn't need.
And that kind of thing is what this reading series is really, we're trying to showcase,
I don't care.
culture here,
Just
bring
don't.
different
What do you
pieces
mean?
in, and so these kind of projects are what we're all about, so.
Well, it did strike me that
There's some here.
there's.
And I'm happy to.
Oh, no.
Okay, I won't say no, but
Lindsay and Rue.
I like that, thank you, sir. I've really been enjoying, of course, your book.
Thank you.
This is such a good book.
Thank you. That's hard work.
Yeah, that was terrific.
Actually, I'm working
Are you?
with the editor I worked with at West Virginia is now kicked.
Okay.
And so I'm working with the same editor.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, which is great. Yes. And she's actually from. She's from. She's from what community?
Okay.
No, she's from. She went to Wesleyan. Then she did her master's in publishing at Oxford. And then worked for 5 years for Oxford University Press. Masters in publishing. Masters in publishing and and worked the whole time at Press, and then they gave her a job for 5 years. She was working as an associate there and doing. So then she came back and was like the assistant acquisitions editor.
So excited to be here. Beautiful day.
She was the chief acquisitions editor.
I can't wait to go outside this evening. I think I'm gonna take Gus to
Anyway, yeah.
By the way,
to get some
Gus.
ideas.
How
How you doing?
are you?
Good.
yeah, you guys
We met last year.
this is Bob Hutton's part of
You came out and saw Rob Guy.
absolutely, yeah, we went to the
Who do you know at Kentucky Press?
My editor,
Who?
Abby Freeman.
Oh, okay.
I know Ashley also.
Ashley's a good friend of mine. Abby I met.
It's one of the things we like about Bob. We like a lot of things about Bob, but he knows everybody.
Well, I've been
Or you'll
publishing
get
for a
to know,
minute.
yeah, or you'll get to know everybody.
I've been
He's got
publishing for a minute.
connections.
Ashley's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, I like Ashley a lot. I don't know Ashley as well, but
Abby's been with the company for 50 years now.
yeah, she's been there 5, 6 years now.
My book came out more than going on 11 years ago.
Who's the editor you worked with?
My acquisitions editor I started off with was Andy.
You're Julia from Oregon.
Dawson.
Thanks for coming.
I think at the time she was in.
Camera gave you away.
But then they swapped me off to Ashley. She was still doing acquisitions. I think I drove Andy crazy.
That's our featured reader.
Me and Ashley.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And,
Well, it was It was the acquisition thing. The publishers who called me one day and said, Bob, you need to start arguing with Vandalia.
Can manage a little bit.
Because we got into it over time.
Footnotes. How long was it yesterday?
But,
45-ish minutes.
staying friends.
Yeah, I like this text a lot.
Yeah, in fact, I'm pretty sure they need me now.
Actually went off to work for Indiana Press for a minute.
This morning, they had the benefit of me being in the house a little bit longer.
You have the cutest dog.
Alex, is that a Durham
Yeah.
Bulls hat?
The Blue hat.
Oh, okay.
We're wearing matching hats.
Oh, okay,
I was
cool.
trying to get
Are they
them
fitted or one size fits all?
stay away from my
How big do the fitted blue hats get?
I think they can get them as big as you love them. These are 7.5s.
Okay. Find me a size 8 and I'll buy 2.
Awesome. I'll tell
So much
Coach.
stuff in there.
Two, please.
But Wallace will eat all of that.
I've been on
funny.
women's baseball
He's such a
cats
goblin.
some time,
Leave my
but size
cats
8's kind of
alone.
hard to come by.
And I let them run around.
Yeah, I think
In the main area.
one of the
Then they-
assistant coaches on the baseball team wears like an
punched
8.5,
the
so they can definitely go up to that size.
Which is
I
the
thought
best
that would
way
be
to
good.
try it.
I wear,
Gift
I
from
wear like
the
a
baseball
And then
coach.
I-
seven,
I
between a
caught
seven
I
and
had mentioned to
three-quarters
him on
and
a
an 8.
film
Yeah.
Depending on who
athletics
gets that.
podcast. And I
Yeah,
had mentioned like,
I
what do I gotta
just
do for
haven't
this
done
patch? And he
that.
was just like, we've got spares. I can bring
Wallace
them
is a
to you.
goblin.
I one of my spares. Yeah.
You know,
Al
so
Schwartz
runs
was so
around.
he gave me spares.
Dining room.
Who you know?
Yeah.
I just go to show it, so you're not.
I'm BS.
I said, well, yeah,
Sure it is.
that's a coin of phrase.
Gus does the same. When Gus knows he has to go in the crate, he'll do anything.
Hey,
Yeah.
you tell me your size.
I mean, he
know what
wasn't
I have.
even taking the bribes, but
Football
I
on the
put fresh water in his bowl and then he went in.
I get that.
He just had his head in there.
Got a mind to get at.
That's the same thing.
It's just like, it's the same place for you. And yes, I
Come
know.
on.
Exciting to watch.
Maybe a little.
Who won?
Yeah, I don't
bit
get
tiny.
into that stuff, but I did for
Oh, yeah.
Which side?
Is that mine?
Yeah,
The negative one
It's
was
gonna be
only by,
something.
2 votes.
Is that right?
Too good. So I did for the- they might be
In the
shy,
day.
Of the voting audience.
but maybe.
Yeah, I'm using your
But in
brain
addition,
to,
year after it's empty.
because I'm trying to do these really painfully.
Well,
I don't think it looks like digital art. I want it to look like Will
Team
Gaines.
that won 2 votes, though.
Brandon.
Did he have a training on
This looks like the same kind of thing.
Barney's doing a triple
Negative vote for legit.
because,
Joseph, so
rather than doing a painterly, like, impressionist style painting,
Yeah.
Barney's is a Victorian era
Four
painting.
of them, Crossfire, but
I'd be scared. I feel like if I saw that in
When
motion.
I
guess, right?
Yeah, that's the goal, is to have all of Barney's paintings at the end of free.
I know it's
Oh, where is Dennis? It actually says. That came for Christmas at the same time as Nana here. Is that white?
I forget Africa.
I just, whatever's
Here's one
in
of the winning team members. We do have Dr. Waz's sign-in sheet. If anyone's here for,
He said, what will children
yeah,
do?
right up there. It was, Sandra.
Dr. Watkins is here.
Don't give them that.
I do like my spoon. And one year they
It was
gave
supposed to be
me
my
a
last
purple
national.
cone that says, what
Dr. White?
Nana stays at Nana's.
Oh.
With that.
Like the day I was leaving, I saw.
You have a sign-in sheet?
This is back when she was
Okay.
Somewhere.
a lot of girls.
Who's asking? It's over on the counter. Oh, it's on the counter. Thank you, Emily. Yeah, it's on the counter. Did you find it?
She did.
I did.
She's a billionaire now. Oh.
I knew people
So-
used to be writers in the
That's
round.
totally up to you. You know, I know we didn't talk about it. It's
Everybody else felt
Like, I
like
mean, I feel like you're.
Old theater. They had shoulders. Yeah. I was going to the bar.
Yeah,
My niece is in every
Two
Mother's
weeks.
Day. I don't try. They always give me a shirt that says best life ever on it, or something.
We've been manual
It is sweet.
I have too many shirts like that now.
I do that is I got 1 year, Phyllis said, it's partial, and I need to know what she figures out.
Color.
This time it's not purple.
Yeah.
Because purple, which is their name.
As opposed to the, according to the pronunciation of the
Yeah. Like Africa's divided.
But I've got
you're still putting the emphasis on the theater.
Okay, close enough. I'm 30 years old.
Before we begin.
She means well, because there's a big part to it.
Yeah. As opposed but you can't say theater. That doesn't. That wouldn't sound right
They
either.
don't emphasize the A.
No. Someone can say theater.
I'm not happy.
You know anyone does?
I know, exactly. Same.
It's the furthest north I've ever lived.
That's why we have to do the easy
I know.
reading.
I grew up so far in the south, I
It's
thought
just
Kentucky was in the
less.
west.
You have to do the normal version.
Am I from West Virginia?
No, I wouldn't call this region. West Virginia is a liminal state.
I like it, I like that, I'm a little guy. So I'm never like, wait.
A couple of the flags we got, 5 Maple Leaf, 50 stars.
Why would the,
Mexico.
why is the Civil War the only criterion for regional distinction? Why is, I mean, that was 4 years.
That was the whole reason that it. After that, I just think, yeah, yeah.
Might go longer.
It used to be a small piece. Now it's
I'm gonna understand, just trying to think if I can.
10 years after we started playing.
He's so funny, he's going to take us out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a Confederate.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, in 1872, they.
Really?
Didn't take long.
Really?
Yeah, they didn't hold on forever, but they still
It
didn't
is, but
take
that's
long.
why it's cracking.
They're not so powered for sure feels it.
I've never
But they're all
had
dead
it.
now.
I need places to convert. Didn't they take down the statue recently?
People conflate
Yeah, there's a whole
the,
thing that they can take down the statue.
in the Capitol, you know.
Yeah, the Capitol.
Yeah, I was gonna say, one of the salsa sauces, I don't remember
Before I
which
even.
Coach Brodler was telling us on the coach show.
Oh, was he? I didn't know. I thought he switched over.
Yeah,
The
Jack
speech I saw.
Jack was the first I do all the editing.
The speech I saw.
You go back, Webster.
Yeah, he renounced his whole,
She has to leave.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, this is Drake. Drake is his DJ. We've met.
Well, his
in
district,
passing.
he said where he first ran, at the
Oh,
time, it
Thursdays
was
is
still
the same.
local plan dominated.
Oh, it's
Every time I see you, I know it's different.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
good.
they
You can watch that
I
probably.
teach sometimes, it's just like, it's just
Downtown, at the courthouse.
It was never as bad.
150 years. Bad idea.
On there, out by the somewhere.
I mean, they're making it
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up.
But, yeah, I told oh yeah, is that, they're presenting that during finals?
They were debating crazy.
Oh, I wonder,
I was surprised that happened.
I wonder because I want to do a book.
Davis and,
George was trying to get, see if Justin would act in it, but she's just like, you know, that'd be cute.
Davis and Elkins, yeah. They were father-in-law, son-in-law. And the father-in-law was an old Confederate, the son-in-law was a Republican.
I have a stitching brush.
They both made a killing, cold horses.
There's so much
They
Previous.
decided that they would attempt to have a sin for forming a church based school. that's the way I was raised.
So
But they had no problem collaborating. Them, the war was over. The real color. Wow,
What?
man.
The original, what?
Died.
You have, this is the Constitution. Wilson P. Brothers.
Things she had to do was produce a play in order for that class to start to go.
Oh, so what was that? What is that?
1863 was allowed in the Union with a particular
Ah, but then
1860
that's-
Constitution. They had a new convention in 1872. A lot of southern states did that sort of thing, but most of them
Which, I'm finding an idea as to what the gym's gonna look like.
Somebody tried to preserve it, and they just put the tape.
Yeah.
Wesley finally showed.
Well,
us
it's in pretty good shape, I think it's
That's original. Yes, the original.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so it's very fast.
Oh, yeah.
From deciding what you're going to do.
archive. Not much more important than archive.
Well, I'm excited to see what they throw together.
We have
Nobody archive on every campus.
specialty Irish
Historical society never will always do it.
I love it.
I mean, we do have the option to sell the whole thing, but
I think we can start it, so
Well, most of the, and also if you read the history books, they generally don't.
I see you, I just don't normally see you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. So glad you could all be here for our latest event in the ongoing Little Kanawha Reading Series. This is the last one of the semester, but it's just in time for April and National Poetry Month. And welcome to all of you out there watching this via our YouTube stream. And thank you, Draven, as always, for making that possible. As you all know, the Little Kanawha Reading Series is a collaboration between the Department of Language and Literature, the Department of Social Science, and the Robert F. Kidd Library. Its mission is to provide a showcase for a diversity of literary forms and voices in order to acknowledge and enrich the cultural heritage of Appalachia. Before I introduce this afternoon's reader, I'd like to also thank Jason Gum, as always, and the RFK Library for once again hosting us and for providing snacks. We have a wonderful reader for this evening. Doug Van Gundy is the author of A Life Above Water from Hen Press. It's a cycle of poems that examine the natural and the human worlds and the boundaries between the two. He co-edited the anthology Eyes Glowing at the Edge of the Woods, Fiction and Poetry from West Virginia. I'm a huge fan of this anthology. It's a real treasure trove of contemporary American literature and such an important representation of Appalachian literature particularly. Doug is also an associate professor at West Virginia Wesleyan College. That has changed. Congratulations! Yeah, congratulations. Absolutely, that's a milestone. Congratulations. At Wesleyan College, just down the road from in Buchanan. He directs Wesleyan's MFA program in creative writing, and he plays banjo and fiddle, sometimes I'm told, with our very own David Adele. Without further ado, please welcome Doug Van Gundy. So glad to be here, Doug. Thank you.
So glad to have you. Thanks for having me. How is everyone tonight, this afternoon? To start with some show business pandering. Glenville, West Virginia. Are you ready to poem? Excellent. That's what I want to hear. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Jonathan, thanks for having me here. Thanks to the Glenville community, and thanks to all of you for coming out. It's my honor to be here. So I'm going to start with a new poem. I have a 22-month-old daughter that I was the
I was a donor for a daughter that I get to be involved in her life. And so this is a poem that I wrote for her. It's called Hold On. I can see you turning on lights in the mansion of your mind. One room after another flooded with clarity and illumination, and with each click of whatever switch you've stumbled upon comes a half-sighed, half-spoken, wow. It is one of the few words you own, so you use it everywhere. Wow when the dog yawns, wow at the rising moon, wow when you discover the thing wriggling under the blankets is your own foot. Soon enough, such small pleasures will cease to surprise you. Soon enough, you will feel like maybe you've seen it all. I'm begging you, hold on to that wow, that willingness to be delighted, the openness the rest of us have forgotten we've forgotten. Thank you. I'm going to jump around and do like 4 little sections here, and depending on how bored you all look after a few minutes, that will determine how we go from here. So I have a new book coming out next fall of 25, that is currently called A Charm Against Forgetting. And it's the book of Appalachian poems. I never thought that I would write something that was just a collection of mostly Appalachian-facing poems. And yet here this is. So I will start with a poem called A People's History of Randolph County, West Virginia. But truth be told, this could be any county in West Virginia. Imagine how it used to be. All that remains now are stones and ghosts. You can't look at the old topographical maps and see the places where the miners used to live. Even the names of the settlements are missing. Jeff Scott's, Laurel, Roaring Creek Junction. If you go there today, bushwhack through briars and Joe Pie, you will have to dig into the ground to find anything to prove that people ever even lived here. To prove that people ever even lived here, dig into the ground. To find anything, you'll have to bushwhack through briars and Joe Pie if you go there today. Jeff Scott's, Laurel, Roaring Creek Junction, even the names of the settlements are missing, the places where the miners used to live. Look at the old topographical maps and see. All that remains now are stones and ghosts. You can't imagine how it used to be. Thank you. I'm a really strange hybrid. Like most people in sort of Central Appalachia, I'm a Northern European mutt. But my father, well, on my mother's side, I'm the second person to go to college. Her baby brother went, and he was 12 years older than I, or 12 or 13 years older than I. And then I went. And totally blue collar, union household, coal miner, truck drivers, railroad people, working for the power company, working in machine shops. That's that one half of my family. On the other side, I'm a 5th generation college professor. And it's a kind of a funny place to be, but this is about the first side. It's called Lucky. My people crawled up from underground, birthed into the failing sun of a. I'm going to start all over again because that was terrible, and we'll take it out in post-production. No one will ever know. I'll even give you a very quick other introduction here. I was lucky enough to have this next poem included in an anthology called What Things Cost, an anthology for the people that's came out from the University Press of Kentucky last year, and it was edited by Ashley Jones and Rebecca Gale Howell, and it's a collection of labor-facing writing. Anyway, this is called Lucky. My people crawled up from underground, birthed into the failing sun of West Virginia and western Pennsylvania 6 days a week, eyes blinking, even in dim winter, adjusting to a light brighter than the one still burning on their own foreheads. Every home in every little town, walking distance from work. Every white frame house facing an undulating brick street. Every household centered on the mine or the mill. Coal and glass, coal and steel. Coal shoveled into the furnace, loaded into the stove, ground into the knees and elbows of sweat-stained work clothes. Everything underlaid by that prehistoric heat. My people came from coal country Scotland, trading the pit for the deep mine, that monoculture for this melting pot, one back-breaking job for another that was exactly the same. Sometimes somebody died. Sometimes a broken back or a snapped femur was called lucky. Saturday nights they went dancing at the Moose or Elks. Sundays there were starched Presbyterians, skin scrubbed bathtub pink. Monday morning they were back in the earth before daybreak, the lucky among them resurrected in time for supper. Thank you. This is actually a Gilmer County poem, really. I'd forgotten this. Driving to the West Virginia State Folk Festival one year, I went by a little revival where they were doing a baptism in the river down here, and that's where this poem came from. It's called Revival, because I'm subtle like that. Dust hangs over the river bottom like background noise, a low murmur of light. Just off the hard road, high school kids are making $3 an hour pointing at places for cars to park. Last week, this pasture was full of polled Herefords, and next week it will be again. But for now, Jeeps and Hondas and F-150 pickups jostle cheek by jowl like cattle shooted for the slaughterhouse, their drivers drawn, out of faith or fear or animal curiosity, toward the canvas tent that, glowing in the gathering dusk, throbs softly with music and shouting and sudden amens. You can wait till the very end if you like, that's fine. Or you can clap anytime you like. I'm going to share a couple of sort of strange poems that all have to do with water. So this one's called The Second Coming. I was born in water. True, for 5 years I had walked around, a body in search of a soul. But when I fell into the river and found myself staring into my trout mother's liquid eye, I knew I would die, and so was finally alive. My human father, hovering above in wings of flannel and cigarette smoke, lifted me and wept over me and set my feet upon dry land. From that day forth, I've been a breathing boy, stumbling toward the grave, but I've never forgotten the bank I was born beneath, or how my mother was resigned to my sudden departure, her fanning fins waving me goodbye. The next one, I keep moving poems around in this collection because it's, in the process of getting ready to come out, so I can't remember where some poems are. There we go. And I kind of see this one as a companion poem to the one I just read. Both of these poems actually are coming out in the forthcoming edition of a journal called Cave Wall. That's a terrific annual journal. The Well. The well was a dark and holy place, a mystery and a measure of the fear a young boy could carry in the pockets of his corduroys. My father lowered me until my body was beneath the board top, and I was bathed in darkness and dank. For a year or so, he could still hold my weight, even though I'd grown tall enough for my hair to touch the surface of the water as he gripped my ankles and I folded my arms. Water wicked up my forelock, and somehow he knew when the cold had reached my forehead. At that moment, he'd lift me up and out of the stacked stone dark and into the wide accepting light. It wasn't cruel. It was a ritual, like baptism or shrouding the dead, something to ready me for the world to come. And I'll do one more from this collection, and another sort of strange Appalachian poem. I guess, like I said, they all kind of are. This is called Last Thoughts on Electronic Voice Projection. Does anyone know what electronic voice projection is? What is it?
When you use a machine to make your voice louder, isn't it?
No. Although that, I think technically that would be right if you use a machine to make your voice louder. But EVP is the idea that you can hear the voices of the dead in like signals from outer space and tape hiss and the noise between stations on the radio. And when I was growing up over in Elkins, one of my best friends had, I swear, I remember it as like the Reader's Digest guide to the mysterious and the occult. And I loved that book at his house. And so I would read it all the time, and I got fascinated with this idea. Anyway, this is called Last Thoughts on Electronic Voice Projection. My grandmother calls less and less frequently since she died. And when she does, it's always to complain. She's cold, she's hungry, the coroner has made a mistake, that sort of thing. I listen as patiently as I can. I am still in love with the music of her voice. While she was alive, she'd sing big band standards in her nasal soprano, the whole time stuffing pork chops or washing the dishes, until I'd slip an arm around her back and waltz her around the linoleum, me taking over the singing, she giggling like a little girl and dripping soap from the waterlogged rag in her hand. Now her voice is ossifying through the degrees, getting thinner and thinner, now FM, now AM. Finally, she'll open her mouth on the wordless static of the stationless radio or interstellar space. One day, I'll answer the phone and hear even less than the background sound of the line, only the silence behind the silence, my memory of her having gone as voiceless as a doll. But enough with the chipper ones, let's get to some depressing stuff. It is a myth, but there's also some measure of truth to it. Usually if you're having a really, really good time, and you're full of joy and energy and sunshine and whatever neurochemicals or hormones are making you want or do the things that you're wanting or doing, you usually don't have time to sit down and write a poem. But if you're broody and it's a rainy day or you're waiting for the funeral to begin or something, it's a perfect time to take out your notebook and jot a little something down, which I recommend. So, speaking of that, I'm going to read 2 more poems for the dead. If you notice from the Lucky poem and that last poem, I think about, probably like a lot of people from our region, I think a lot about our ancestors, my ancestors, and history and the stories that sustain us. I think ours is a region that really is nourished by stories and really values the telling of stories and the keeping alive of stories. So 2 more about death directly, or actually about the dead directly. This one is called The Dead Do Not Care. The dead do not care about you. Of course, your tears are well-intentioned and sincere and bring you some relief. The dead do not give a fig about them. Your tears are unknown to them. You weep in a language they were born into, but no longer understand. The dead are not interested in the balance in your 401k, nor are they particularly concerned about refugees, so many of whom they will soon meet. Nor with the widening hole in the ozone layer. The dead make no bones about their indifference regarding the Kardashians, and their disregard for the current state of the International Monetary Fund is so utter as to remain beneath mention. Take a look in the date books of the sleepless dead. You will find only entries for silence written in a spidery hand. And then this is called For the Dead of West Virginia, Still Waiting for a Better Day. If I told you I used to be a goth, would you believe me? Still in my heart. Okay, For the Dead of West Virginia, Still Waiting for a Better Day. My ancestors are sown in pocket graveyards throughout these mountains. Private plots lucky to get mown monthly by some volunteer from the Methodist Church or an inmate from the county jail. Their headstones lean into the hillsides and their bony wrists are crossed, patiently waiting for the new body they were promised from the pulpit as they sat aching on bare wood pews after a 6-day week of felling and barking timber, or walking miles behind a team of horses, or killing and cooking chickens, or wielding a pick and shovel in a 4-foot seam half a mile inside a mountain. This isn't to say they didn't know love and joy, that they didn't revel in pleasure and play. They held their children in their laps and sang loud and out of tune and fought and laughed, of course, because that is the unkillable kernel at the heart of being human. But know this, they never knew any work that didn't hurt. And they only worked because they had to, because there had to be a better life beyond this one. But there they lie, still moldering, still waiting, and maybe beginning to believe they were sold a bill of goods. And this hole is the only home they'll ever know, from here on out, forever and ever. Amen. Okay. Another poem about West Virginia. They say write what you know, which actually is good advice when you're starting writing. How many of you write? Excellent. Good to see. Glad of that. Really glad of that. How many of you have heard that piece of advice? Write what you know. I would like to gift you a corollary to that. Yes, write what you know, but also write what you want to know. Write into the unknown. Start from where you are and reach out. Find the things that haven't been said or the things you didn't know. That's as useful as anything also. So one of the things I didn't know until 4 or 5 years ago was this ancient Persian poetry form called the ghazal. Some people pronounce it guzzle. I just can't bring myself to do that. And I think probably the GH is supposed to be kind of a somewhere between a G and an H. Figure that out. So the ghazal is an old Persian form, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. The mystic poet Rumi used to write ghazals, and it's in couplets, so 2-line stanzas. Looks like this, for those of you who can see that. And each of the couplets, the second line of each of the couplets ends with the same word, and the last pair of couplets is supposed to have a reference to the poet. And I kind of worked my way around that. A lot of them have like proper names, which I didn't use here. But anyway, this is a ghazal called A Few Lines Pointing Toward West Virginia. They say if you travel far enough, all roads lead to West Virginia. No matter where you wander on earth, everybody knows that song about West Virginia. Fact. There was a tremor in the air. Birds flew from limbs all over West Virginia. The bells tolled through the afternoon until there wasn't a dry eye in West Virginia. On a boat in the Gulf of Alaska, A fisherman sees a certain slant of light and remembers West Virginia. Before you were born, I waited for you. Before I was born, there was only West Virginia. They'll know you wherever you go. The dirt beneath your nails smells of West Virginia. Whither thou goest, saith the Lord, thou goest with me. As for me, I'm headed to West Virginia. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really like collaborative work. I really like, Jonathan mentioned the anthology, The Eyes Glowing at the Edge of the Woods anthology, and I edited that with another West Virginia writer, Laura Long, who did the fiction, and I did the poetry. And then we collaborated on which pieces made it in, and we collaborated with an editor at WV Press, and we collaborated with all 67 of the authors who were in it, and we collaborated with their presses so that we could get permission to reprint their work. And it's just, I love people working together toward some common goal, whether it's a big group collaboration like an anthology, or a small collaboration like this project that I did with a photographer by the name of Matt Eisch. Matt is an amazing poet, Freudian slip, but he is a poet with a lens, for sure. He is a photographer who is obsessed with poetry, and I am a poet who is obsessed with photography. And I frequently write about photographs and photographers and do these sort of ekphrastic poems around mostly black and white photographs. But Matt and I were paired for a project. We were both, Matt was going to do this photography project for the economic hardship reporting program, the economic hardship reporting project. Too many P's, you get everything there. Program, people, project. And this is an organization that was started by Barbara Ehrenreich, who wrote Nickel and Dime, Death in America, and who just recently passed away last year. But it's to fund writing about marginalized populations and people who are living in poverty or affected by economic hardship. So Matt said he wanted to work with a poet, and the woman at the foundation said, "Do you know Doug Van Gundy's work?" And he's like, "No." She said, "Let me pair you with him and let you guys talk." And so he went and read my book, and we got on the phone and talked for 3 hours. Like, he called me out of the blue, and we talked for 3 hours. And I was like, this is going to be good. So we spent, in 2017, we spent a week in July and a week in December in Webster County, over around Webster Springs and Burgoo, Park Hole, Holly River, that whole area. And Matt made photographs, and I interviewed people and talked to them, and I took their stories and their details and my observations of this place and my history of being from over the ridge in Randolph County. And we did this project for the Guardian newspaper, which is originally out of Manchester, England. But it's a big international paper, and they've got a web presence, and so this was out there. The third collaborator was a woman by the name of Elizabeth Catt, who is an ethnographer who wrote an introduction to the whole thing. Anyway, you're not here to hear about that. You're here to hear some poems. The end result, though, we collected, along with some other photographs of Matt's and some other poems of mine, in this chapbook, which is available for sale if you're interested, and it's $5. It's just, we wanted to make it so that anybody who wanted one wouldn't suffer an economic hardship to get it in your hands. And if you want one, you don't have $5, talk to me, and we'll figure something out. So I thought I might read you just a couple of the poems from here. That poem, People's History of Randolph County, West Virginia, that I read early in the reading, is in this collection. This one's called Burgoo, which is an old coal camp. And there's an epigraph from WDNE AM radio which is the radio station I grew up listening to on my little red clock radio. It was the radio station that woke me up every morning when I was a kid, and it woke me up with the mine report. This is during UMWV strikes and whatnot, so people didn't know if they were working the next day. So you turn on the radio at 6 in the morning and they'll say, tomorrow this mine will work. 6 in the morning and 6 at night. And Irene McKinney, our former poet laureate, had an entire book called The 6 O'Clock Mine Report that was based on, and she and I grew up about 11 miles apart, and 11 miles and 30 years apart. So this is also a little nod to her that I include this. Burgoo mine number 1 will not work. Burgoo mine number 1 will not work tomorrow. Burgoo. These mountains have stopped swallowing men and spitting them back out, bruised by what they've seen and done. The men are gone, minds emptied, drift mouths mute. Coal camp names remain: Burgoo, Parcoal, Diana, stripped, half-sung litany of used to be. Here's the one that's a little more bucolic. Late summer, West Virginia. I really love the picture that Matt took that goes with this. There's an old woman that we stopped. She talked to us all morning long, and when we wanted to make her picture, she said, nope. And we went, okay, that's fine. And then she was doing something, and Matt said, may I make a picture of your hand? And she said, that would be fine. So, late summer, West Virginia. In the dark of the moon, summer and winter sounds collide outside my window. Below, bullfrogs bellow in the muddy river. Above, katydids stridulate in the twisted oaks. Higher still, skeins of geese honk southward. Somewhere, a screech owl laughs and cries. In the mist of the morning, I can see the daylilies are spent, their green blades gone brown, collapsed under their withering weight. Cardinals bully the finches, that bully the sparrows, that bully the house wrens at the backyard feeder. Someone has left a sack of tomatoes inside the screen door. I'm a big fan of the slightly abrupt ending there. How are we doing on time? Okay. You never want to overstate your welcome here when you're giving a poetry reading, so I'll read you just a few more. So another collaborative project that I did recently is I am part of a group that a group of poets all over the country called Writing the Land, this project called Writing the Land. And there are anthologies coming out for every state or region about threatened places and protected places. So I was asked by the Nature Conservancy over in Virginia to come to one of their protected places, a place called Warm Springs Mountain, and just spend some time there and then write some poems for this anthology. And that'll be coming out next year, or actually later this year, the anthology will. But I think these are kind of semi-universal West Virginia poems too. This one's called Warm Springs Mountain, August. And a tip of the hat to the Nature Conservancy folks out there, especially the Nature Conservancy Virginia. Danny White, the guy I worked with, was just an absolute joy, and he took me all over that piece of land. And read this for him. Warm Springs Mountain, August. I look east on a clear day from Flag Rock, across the valley and ridge, out over Big Piney and Beards Mountain, through Panther Gap, to little north in the blue distance, toward the coastal plain and the Chesapeake, and I'm taken by a romantic and wrong-headed vision, imagining the masts of ships well beyond the horizon, their pilots and passengers yet to set foot on this land they believe is unknown and unnamed. Likewise, looking west, out over the Warm Springs Valley toward the plateau, across the Jackson River to Back Creek Mountain and Allegheny beyond that, and beyond even that, the accordion of ridges that stretch to the Ohio. I can almost see ghosts of smoke rising against the late summer haze from the stick and mud chimneys of cabins built by Scots and German and English settlers. I even imagine looking straight down at my feet through the accumulated strata of earth and time, deposit and upheaval, continental drift and Appalachian orogeny, eventually arriving at the bottom of a Cambrian sea, its mollusks and sea fans buried beneath millions of years of quartz and shale and sand. Dreaming like this in the here and now, I almost overlook the mushrooms and mosses turning last year's leaves and limbs to soil, and the oaks and hickories turning the morning sunlight into leaves and acorns, and down the ridge, high up in the canopy, a pileated woodpecker, drumming as he excavates the dead trunk of a decades-old chestnut tree, hollowing out a home. And I think I'm going to save the second one from here to finish with. I'll read you some very, very new poems. These are poems I've written over the last 3 nights. And I discovered, I think it's important to do that, to try things in the air, to see how people respond to them, to see how I respond to them when I hear them out loud. But also, I feel like it's important for me to do this in front of young writers to model the kind of vulnerability that you need to, and the kind of community. And if poetry isn't like notes for language that's written in the air, I don't know what it is. So these are 3 poems that take little 2-line poems from 5th century or 15th century Japanese poet and split them apart and write a poem in between. So his poems are only 2 lines long. His first line is my first line. His second line is my last line, and also his last line. So I'll read you his little poem first, and then they're italicized in each of these poems, which you won't see, but you can see which are his and which are mine. So this first one's called, his poems don't have titles. His first poem is, Nature's a Killer. I won't sing to it. I hold my breath and listen to the dead singing under the grass. You wouldn't think I would like a poem like that, right? given the kind of things that you've heard here this afternoon. Okay, so I call this one Magnolia. Nature's a killer. I won't sing to it, won't fall under its seductive spell of scents and shimmers and songbirds. I'm too grounded for that. I know true beauty is on the ground and in the ground. The beetles and earthworms, the nematodes and fungi that keep us all from being buried beneath last year's dead leaves, and the dead leaves of the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that. The wind through trees isn't music to me. Magnolia perfume holds no association or charm. Wrens and warblers twittering up among the limbs spout gibberish, not wisdom. I hold my breath and listen to the dead singing under the grass. Thank you. Here's the second of these, and oddly, each one of these ended up with, in my part, a flower, and so that one's Magnolia. This one's called Lashes the Lilac, and this fellow, whose name was Ikkyu, Ikkyu, written in English characters. His poem is, Pine needles inches deep hug the ground. No one lives here. Lashes the Lilac. Pine needles inches deep hug the ground. High above, they've been replaced by the black coughs of ravens and blue laughter of jays. Something is falling everywhere you look. Rain, apple blossoms, the red doe's blinked lashes, the lilac-colored spores of oyster mushrooms colonizing the dead bodies of maples. Everything is earthbound eventually. Gravity and death are persistent and persuasive. Between them, it's no wonder no one lives here. And I'll finish up with this one. Again, I appreciate you all coming out, and I'm happy to talk with you afterward. If you have any questions, well, actually, maybe we'll do a little Q&A at the end, but I'm happy also to talk with you informally afterward. So this is called Jasmine Saving. EQ's poem is, poems should come from bare ground, night falling on a black landscape. Jasmine Saving. Poems should come from bare ground. You should taste minerals and soil as they fall from your open mouth. Poems should live a day at most, flickering and rising like mayflies from stones in the middle of the river. Poems should open and close like the night-blooming jasmine, saving its nectar for the night. Poems should rise from the moonless dirt, bloom for a moment, then collapse, night falling on a black landscape. Thank you all so much for coming out. Does anyone have any questions? No need to be shy. Yes, sir.
Dr. Minton had mentioned that you have a background in old time and bluegrass music.
Yes, way more old time than bluegrass. Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough to have married into a historic old time music family based in Braxton County, the Wine family.
Oh, I knew Melvin very well.
I was going to
I used to
ask
travel.
if you knew Melvin.
Yeah, I knew Melvin very well. As a matter of fact, I play in a duo called Born Old, and it's me and this guy Paul. We've been playing together for I think 2002 was our 25th anniversary. So I think we've been playing for 27 years together, and we come to the folk festival. We used to come to the folk festival almost every year. The folk festival is the weekend of my wedding anniversary, so some years I can't make it. And then my daughter had the rudeness to be born on June 17th. My wedding anniversary is June 22nd. So who knows when I'll get back over here for that. I did find out that she was born while I was at folk festival, though. I found out on this campus. Anyway, but Paul and I went with Melvin, drove with Melvin, came over. Well, actually, somebody picked him up over in Copen or in Gem and brought him over to Elkins. We loaded into a van, a bunch of people, a folklorist and his wife and Melvin and me and Paul, and we drove to the Bronx and gave a concert with some Puerto Rican traditional musicians at Ostos Community College of New York University. And it was a great reception. The Puerto Rican musicians were amazing. But we got to stay in like a Fleabag hotel on Upper Broadway with Melvin, and Melvin told stories all the way up the road and all the way home. And I don't know if any of you all knew him. He's been gone now for, probably maybe 15 years, 2008.
Yeah, I believe 2008.
This was 2000. I think this was either 99 or 2000. And but he would sing little scraps of songs all the way up and tell little stories. I remember I was telling him, he said, "Now, Doug, who taught you to play fiddle?" And I said, "Well, it was a guy named Mose Kaufman." And he said, "You ever hear this? Mose slid down the mantelpiece, rubbed his heel in axle grease, said, 'Out of the way and let me pass, or I'll make you sniff my greasy heel.'" That was Melvin. He was his motto, he told me, was "No fools, no fun." He said he and his brother had that motto all their lives. And he said after Melvin started having a family and got real serious about his faith, he stopped playing in beer joints, but his brother did for a while still. And one night he came back from the beer joint just all torn up, and somebody had knocked him down and grabbed him by the leg and dragged him up a dirt road a little ways. And Melvin said, "What happened to you?" And he said, "I met somebody who didn't know no fools, no fun." So that's some of my Melvin stories. Yeah, he was great. He was great. Any other questions? Yes.
What was the organization you said that Barbara Ehrenreich? Could you tell us more about that group, whatever?
Sure, it's called the Economic Hardship Reporting Project. And they fund journalists and photographers and documentarians to go all over the country and talk to people who are affected by economic hardship, and then document them. And then the group, the EHRP, also helps place stories. So I'm sure you've seen pieces that were funded by EHRP in the New York Times or the Atlantic or all sorts of places. They've been doing it, I think, for 15 years now. And there's also an anthology of EHRP writing coming out this year from Haymarket Books in Chicago.
Yeah.
And so Matt's photographs of my poems are going to be part of that collection as well.
Cool. I'll have to get that.
Yeah, but they've got a website. I think it's ehrp.org. If it's not, I'm sorry, Google them.
They used to send out a catalog.
Yeah. Well, just Google them, but they do really fine work.
Because I recommend nickel and dime to almost anyone who says, "What should I read?" That's
Nickel and Dimed is a real important book. Yeah. Any other questions? Any questions about writing poetry or the academic life or going on to graduate school or anything? Yes, sir.
I'll ask a question. So I was just saying, Draven's question about the old time music, it was making me think, right? Like, I mean, and I apologize, a few minutes late.
You're fine.
With paperwork, so maybe it was discussed already.
At least you wore a hat from my cousin's former team.
Okay. Oh, Stan or?
Stan and
or
Jeff.
It was Stan, I can't remember.
It was Jeff.
Yeah, it was Jeff. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's weird.
Anyway.
My junior high French teacher knew him somehow too. I don't remember how she knew him. That was weird.
Anyway, so I'm sorry, what was your question? I'm guessing it's not about NBA basketball.
No, it's not. Now I'm totally derailed though. No, but I was thinking about sort of old time music and like, whether the sort of like, you've taken sort of inspiration from the sort of like lyrical motifs of sort of like old time music and that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, there's so much about nature and you're writing death too, right? And just like that's everywhere. And
Sure.
So yeah, I was curious.
Well, I didn't have time to read all of them, but as an encore, I will read you. I'll read you this one, which is called "Listening to a Recording of Eden Hammond's Playing General Washington's March." Actually, I'm going to read you two music poems because they're sort of close together. The first one's called Country Music. So in the more general sense, my grandfather had a red Chevy like work truck, and I'd drive with him everywhere, go to the hardware stores on Saturday morning, go drink coffee with all his old buddies, and he always had AM country music on. So anyway, country music. It's a high, trebly sound all piled up on the heart until it's spilling out through the nose of an AM radio. That sweet anguish of knowing you're not crazy for feeling so blue. That while nothing is ever going to salve the wound in your heart, at least there's someone who's been down this way before and had the wisdom and foresight to bring along a guitar. Late in the night, when the ache gets as bad as it gets and the moon is as pale and gold as a draft beer, the atmosphere takes on the hard sheen of polished wood on a VFW dance hall floor, and the signal skips all the way across the sky, from WSM Nashville to the blue hollows of the green Alleghenies, pushed hard by fiddles and guitars and 50,000 crackling watts. Here, brothers and fathers, sisters and mothers, cousins and next-door neighbors gather around the lighted dial of the vacuum tube oracle, or sit alone on the bench seats of idling pickup trucks, to learn just how their cheating hearts will tell on them, or to be coaxed into going honky-tonkin', or simply lulled into sweet dreams by the whiskied honey of voices that got just far enough away from these mountains to get flung back home. Those of you who are Patsy Cline fans will recognize a ton of Patsy Cline references in there. She was one of my grandfather's favorites and is one of mine too. That's another. Yeah, I won't read that. That's another one about the dead, but it also has the disembodied souls of a. I'll just read you a little scrap of it. Well, no, it says, around here we keep our dead real close, set them a place at table, keep buttermilk and cartons at the back of the fridge for them. We lift the fiddle from the peg and play tunes they know, listening for their unbearably sweet humming and the patting of absent feet. The lightning bugs are their weightless souls hovering over the lawn on summer nights. Give them a little music and watch the pale lights form figures. Right hand across, how do you do? Left hand back, fine, thank you. That's it. And then this last one is called Listening to a Recording of Ed Hammonds playing General Washington's March. Ed Hammonds was a fiddler who was born in 1874 and was recorded in 1947, and was one of the last of the really archaic fiddlers who got recorded, who happened to live into a time when the technology existed to record him pretty well. The guitarist is clear. Oh, also his son was often his guitarist, and his son was often half a pint ahead of his father, let's say. The guitarist is clearly out of his depth. Adequate, sure, skilled even, but he isn't standing on the same earth as the fiddler, and the fiddler isn't standing on the earth at all. With each pass through, he floats another millimeter above the ground so that the flattened grass springs back beneath his feet and begins again to grow. He never plays the tune the same way, not even once. His variations almost magical and seemingly infinite, the way the low light can turn a hillside from fallow to fire some summer evenings. Or how the glassy river is the same river when it goes dull under the wind's flat hand, returning stranger when in sudden calm it snaps back to placid glass. So, thanks. And I've done some other ones too where I've played with writing little 4-line poems that are, the first letters of each line are E, A, D, and G, which are like the fiddle strings, right? And I've done some where I've used, there's a wonderful Scottish poet whose name just went blank on me. Oh, he's from the far north of Scotland. He lives on a little island. But he's got a poem that is a little history of his little island in 16 fiddle tune titles. It's just fiddle tune titles stacked up, and it's like, too young to marry, haste to the wedding, folding down the sheets. I mean, it's like, that's the one that I was trying to play with using some of our fiddle tunes, but I was really, really impressed by that. David Harsant, maybe? Anyway. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How long have you been at Wesleyan?
15 years. Since 2008. And our MFA program, the Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing, has been around since 2011. So this is our 13th year. Our big 10th anniversary was during COVID, so we're going to have a bigger celebration at 15. But it is a low residency program, which means that you can live wherever in the world you live. We graduated somebody last summer who the whole time he was in the program, he lived in Athens, Greece. But it is an in-person residency, so you come to the Wesleyan campus for 8 to 10 days twice a year and attend intensive craft seminars and do intensive workshop work with the people in your genre cohort, and then attend a ton of public readings and discussions, and then you put together your study plan, and then you go home. And every 3 weeks you exchange new work and revised work with your advisor, and they give you copious comments and maybe a Zoom call, and then you come back 6 months later and do it all over again. And it's 5 residencies, 4 semesters, so you do the beginning and the semester 4 times, and then you come back the 5th residency, and you get to participate in the whole life of the residency. You workshop, but you also give a reading of your own original work, showcased, and you teach a seminar based on your critical work. And then we graduate you. So it's a really a beautiful program, and it's really intimate and small. The sweet spot for the program is 12 to 15 people at a time, and so our faculty never work with more than 3 people, rarely 4, never more than 4, but usually they're working with 1 or 2 people a semester, and so it's really a conversation. It's almost an apprenticeship each semester with a working publishing writer. Would the next question be, when can we stand up, or when can we get some snacks, or when can we go home? Anything else? If you're too shy to raise your hand and ask, come up and see me. I'll be hanging around. Thank you again for coming out. It's been my great honor to be here. Thanks for inviting me.